Hello everybody, and thank you so much for joining me in this very impromptu kind of explanation video. You may or may not have seen some of my updates regarding a falling out with Autism Canada, and due to the fact that it feels like I'm being represented as an aggressive person, I wanted to come on here and kind of explain myself. I just want to say that all of this is alleged, and I am sharing this with free speech in mind. And these are my experiences, and if you've had a great experience or a bad experience with them, that's all good, and that's also very valid. So a few years ago, I had been in touch with them because they wanted my input on a project that they were working on. It was a creative marketplace for autistic individuals to buy and sell their goods, I guess through their website. I have a very successful, almost 10,000 member group on Facebook called Made by Autistics Marketplace and Community, and I don't charge anybody anything. So I noticed recently, a few years later, that this project went live. And the way that I found out about it was somebody unrelated to Autism Canada tagged me on LinkedIn and let me know that, hey, this was happening and maybe you're interested. And I looked at it and I was like, that looks very familiar. That kind of looks like the thing that I contributed to a few years ago. Initially, I did say that they utilized an idea of mine, and they've made it very clear that this was something that they had in mind for a while and that they have proof to back up that it wasn't my idea and all of that kind of stuff. And I just want to say, whether or not it was my idea for the whole project, which apparently it wasn't, which is fine, or I contributed to the project, it would have been nice to have a little bit of a tap on the shoulder, hey, this project's going live, just wanted to let you know, and to maybe have had a thank you or something. I realized I did not have a contract, there was nothing agreed upon, and I didn't charge for my time, which in hindsight, I should have charged for my time, and I should have created a contract. So moving forward, if I am doing any consulting with any organizations or businesses or what have you, I'm going to make sure that I have my bases covered and that I do draft up a contract and possibly an invoice as well. And I will discuss my rates with them, which I haven't determined yet. So that's one of the things that happened. And the other thing that happened as well is that they had their Awesome Conference of 2024, AU-SOME. And they involved a couple of people who are quite polarizing figures within the autism community. We have Daniel Jones of the Aspie world, who continues to use Aspie probably because his page is very much monetized. He can't change it. Even though there has been some pretty disgusting history associated with Hans Asperger and Asperger's in general, and I believe that Asperger's has also been absorbed within the diagnosis of autism. Something to obviously keep in mind. And then Paige Lael, who apparently has her own string of controversies. Daniel Jones, I'm only really scratching the surface. A lot of people have come and shared information to me about instances with him that they've had that have been very questionable nature. I was personally sworn at back in 2019 by his content manager. If you look through the history of my YouTube channel, you'll find a couple videos, and I think I may briefly touch on that. I haven't really watched it in a long time. It's been a significantly long time since I made those videos. And I also realized I used Aspie and Asperger's in some of my previous videos, but I no longer do that because I know better and I understand myself a little bit more. A few other things that I think are so important for me to touch on is something that I had said in a prior shorts that I posted. And that is, while somebody may view me as aggressive, I view myself as passionate and headstrong and unwilling to be somebody's doormat, which is what it feels like was expected of me in this situation. Now, I will take things private, and if I don't hear a response privately, I will go public. And if we are not acknowledging that a lot of people create content these days, then that's a problem, because you cannot expect everybody to discuss things, especially when it comes to their disability or their livelihood, behind closed doors at all times. And unfortunately, it seems like my approach to my activism and advocacy, which is taking things public, openly talking about things, and doing it in a pragmatic and hopefully well edited in terms of how I produce my content way. I refuse to be this agreeable, palatable yes man to these organizations. You cannot expect to have a disability organization and then expect people to be complacent with how you run that. And whether or not the people at the top are autistic, you can't claim to care about all autistic voices and then choose to shut mine out and choose to cut off any kind of relationship that we could have had. They can do what they want ultimately, but at the end of the day, when we are having having these issues, the least they could have done is like, you know what? We understand that you have some concerns, and while you've gone about it publicly, that's not how we choose to conduct things, and we would love to have a meeting and figure out how we can come to some kind of agreement. And this sets a precedent, right? Like, if they would have done that, that would have sent a huge precedent and a huge message. Like, yeah, like autistic people are going to conduct themselves, and we're going to perceive that in a certain way. I never once was aggressive. I never raised my voice. I never got angry. That's not the kind of person that I am at all. Like, I do not conduct myself in that way. But when it comes to activism and advocacy work, it is so inherently controversial in the first place. And I certainly don't expect everybody to like me. I mean, there are multiple organizations that I have probably unknowingly severed ties with. I can think of a few organizations and people off the top of my head. Disability activism and advocacy work is so difficult. A lot of people are not going to be liked when they raise their voice, or they speak so passionately about something that somebody else is like, hey, I don't like that, so I'm gonna just completely cut you off of any feedback that you may have. I'm not doing this for the praise of, if you would just conduct yourself differently, then like maybe we'd want something to do with you. I'm sorry, you don't get to decide how I conduct myself. I'm going to conduct myself in the way that feels truthful and makes sense to me in terms of how I am leading my life. And I'm leading my life in a way that I am a passionate person, and I am not going to be any other way. I don't need praise from these organizations. They can tell me in one hand that they think I'm aggressive and then tell me that I'm doing great work, and if I only approached it in a different way, then maybe like people would like me more or something like that. And why am I going to be inauthentic just to please people that have already decided that they don't like me and they don't like my approach? We need to start paying disabled creators for their contributions, whether or not they hatch the idea of the entire project or they contribute to a project. That's so important, and it shouldn't even have to be said, but it does, because all too often this happens, and if we don't start holding these organizations accountable, it's just going to keep happening to people, and autistic and disabled people are going to continue to be used, and that just can't happen. And I took a stand against it because I didn't like seeing it happen, and I didn't like the way that it made me feel, because it did not make me feel very good about myself. Even still, a few days later after receiving the email that I received, I feel like a pile of trash. I absolutely feel like garbage. And it's too bad that I have allowed Autism Canada to make me feel so bad. I have to be careful with the words I use. I have to tiptoe around this, but if we're going to be serving our communities, why are we using a British man with no connection to Canada who has sensationalist clickbait titles to get them more money? And maybe he's being paid for his time so that the payments for him are going to offset the payments that are the donations that they receive. Because I did look on a charity website and I did notice that the year over the year before, they did receive less money from donors. So maybe they're just scared and they're figuring out, oh my gosh, this is not good. What can we do? Oh, let's use a guy with sensationalist clickbait and hope that his following will translate into monetary gain for us. You know, there's podcasts I'd love to be asked on, and maybe they don't want anything to do with me, and that's fine, because I'm probably gonna restart my podcast. I used to have one called Autistic Speaking. That has been kind of defunct for a few years, but I have so much on my mind in regards to this subject. But let's just remember when it comes to this that your voice is absolutely 110% valid, even if an organization completely shuts you out and doesn't want to listen to you. And I just think this is a broader message to donors, to people that work with disability organizations, that let's acknowledge people's contributions. Autistic voices are valid, except for mine, but yet we're going to perpetuate gender-based misinformation and sensationalized ways of presenting things to get a reaction out of people. And I am not going to sit idly by in the same country as an organization that claims to do something that I'm simply not seeing. I have to keep on trucking. I have to keep on going. Even if people don't like me, I have to remember that I'm not going to always walk into rooms where I'm valued, whether that's metaphorically or physically. I also have to remember not everybody's going to appreciate my approach to activism and advocacy, and not everybody's going to give me the time of day. What I also have to remind myself is I can't let any of those things stop me from the way that I personally choose to do my activism and advocacy work. And these big organizations that are trying to shut me out are not going to shut me up. And while they choose to burn bridges, I'm going to choose to build bridges. Thank you so much.